Well, ladies and gentlemen, to the Graveyard Ship, your official, unofficial Melbourne Storm podcast for those one-eyed Victorians who are experiencing lockdown, but loving what the Melbourne Storm are doing up north for us during these difficult times, and maybe, just maybe, heading towards another premiership win. Certainly looking very good for a top 4 finish and possibly even a top 2 finish after what we'll say was a gritty win over South Sydney over last weekend. Paul, mate, fair to say it was a tough victory. It certainly didn't look good in the first half, but a little bit of a war of attrition. And credit to the guys, they looked good in the second half, and I think ultimately deserved the victory.
Yeah, you're right. You hit the nail on the head. As every rugby league, I think, player says in their post-match interview, credit to the boys, credit to the lads. No, in all seriousness, it was a good win. It wasn't an easy win. First half backs up against the walls. We just did not have any possession. But we were able to still be in the contest. And that was, that left side again, scoring those 2 tries in the first half really kept us in it, especially scoring right on the bell. I think that, going into the sheds, just scoring, knowing that we've been killed with possession in terms of possession, and going into the bell only, what was it at halftime? I think we were 4 points down.
Basically, after having been facing a pretty significant deficit, twice getting out towards double figures.
Yeah,
so twice they essentially had more than a try margin on us, and they should have really been 12 plus points up at the break, and really they just had less than a converted try margin. Really would have been pretty deflating for them, considering how well they played and how much they had us on the ropes in the first half.
Yeah, correct. And second half, I would have liked to be a bit more dominant, but we did enough to get the win. It's really interesting too. I was thinking there's been a lot of games this season, and maybe I should have done my research and had a look, where there's been within 6 points either way at half time, and then we've just gone on with it in the second half. We seem to have really good second halves, which is a good thing, I guess. Maybe it's a credit to our fitness, to our conditioning. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was good to get another 2 points. Tough win at Souths away. That they love to boo the Souths, man. I think even Gus Gould during the commentary said that if there was a gold medal for booing, Souths would win it every year. So they are a very vocal crowd. Considering there's only a few thousand in that 80,000 seat stadium, they were making quite a bit of noise. So another good win. And yeah, we move on to next week. What did you think of the game, Dubs?
Look, I think you've summed it up pretty nicely. The only thing I'd add is the old cliche, and it is a cliche, but it's relevant, that you build your games on defence. And I think we did that quite nicely. Even though we weren't able to form anything fluent, particularly in the first half, we did at least hold out defensively, and we were able to maintain, or at least to hold out long enough against South Sydney so that when we were able to pinch that try very late in the first half and kind of blunt their momentum, you had a pretty good feeling going into the second half that we'd be able to produce something. There was a little bit of the Parramatta game in the first half, in that we just didn't seem to be able to get it quite right. And a lot of things weren't going right, not in terms of the officials necessarily, although in the first half we didn't get the best of runs, despite ironically a few fans on Twitter deciding that apparently Cameron Smith had launched the ball at a basically 180, a 0 degree angle, in fact, would be straightforward. So he must have just tipped the ball forward, apparently, like Tom Brady quarterback. Interesting, because the vision from side on suggests it was pretty much flat, if not slightly backwards even. But anyway, what would we know? Forwards, backwards, it's all the same. As long as the crowd boos loudly enough, it must have been forward. But I digress. Exactly. Look, the important thing is that we did take the points when they were needed. I think at this stage, 2 points is what matters. Goal difference at this point, a points differential doesn't really matter at all. I'd say it's pretty much almost locked in that we'll finish either second or third. The question now becomes, do we get the right to the home final, and will we be playing Parramatta or possibly South Sydney, who are finishing strongly as well? So, look, we still could slip down to fourth and play Parramatta. I think at this stage, though, we're pretty much locked for a top 4 finish, and it's really a matter of whether we're hosting the final or we're travelling.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've got a pretty soft run home, with some disrespect to our opponents. They're not having great years in the Cowboys.
Look, it's not disrespect. It's soft in the sense that the queue's in the rack for them.
Yeah, they're basically all out of contention now. So
yeah, they're going to be sending guys for early finishes to the season, putting guys on ice if they need surgery. If guys who might have been spending huge amounts of time in the hub might be getting a bit of a break, a relief. more experienced players. And this is one of those opportunities to give a debut to a couple of young kids. So who knows what we'll see coming up against us. Doesn't mean they won't be not trying, not in that sense, but we won't be playing sides that are fighting for their lives in the next 2 weeks. So there's no excuses not to take care of them.
They've lost that edge. And in terms of the final, I think Bellamy did say, I can't remember what press conference, he was asked about the question. He obviously said that Suncorp would be a good option. He may even alluded to the fact that they might try to play a final on the Sunshine Coast, which would be pretty cool, but I can't see the league agreeing to that.
No, unfortunately, the league probably won't. And I say unfortunately, not just for us having a ground that we've gotten used to, but also for the Sunshine Coast fans kind of being locked out. They played host to us. They did the right thing by us. I'm sure we'd do the right thing by them if we could, but I can't imagine the league will be racing to use a small stadium for a final. And I get that too from a commercial aspect, but it's just a shame for Sunshine Coast.
Yeah. So, and I did mention a few weeks back now that there was a rumour flying around that all the finals are going to be played in Sydney, but we haven't heard anything there. So hopefully that just was a rumour. And if we do finish top two, which I think seconds, if I was a betting man, I'd put us on finishing on second, then we do get to play in Queensland. We don't play a Sydney team in New South Wales. And
everyone else in the top four is a Sydney team, so that is a very healthy advantage.
Yeah, exactly right. So, but yeah, things are generally looking good. Fallout from the game. Christian Welch was charged for a crusher tackle, which then he was downgraded to a dangerous tackle. I don't know how that works. I'm not sure if you saw this, but the club pleaded no contest, which basically means they said it's just the same if they would fight it and he's guilty. So I think it was a smart move by the club, because I think what would have happened there is if they fought it and lost, it would be a one-match suspension with 0 points carryover. If he had taken the early plea, then it would have been no suspension and 75 points. So I think it's a very smart move, copping a game now for Christian. He's been playing a lot of minutes lately too, so he's probably a week's going to freshen him up, especially now, in a not as critical game.
You want him for finals. Last week. You want him fit and healthy for finals. If we let the carryover points go and he did it in finals and had a half as dangerous tackle there that they found guilty on, those carryover points could have cost him a final. So you're right. Exactly. Wipe the slate clean and give him a week off. Let his body get right and make sure he's 100% fit for going into finals.
Yep, exactly right. So I think that was the only sort of out of there. Am I missing any injuries? It just seems every week there's an injury, but actually
none that I can think of off the top of my head.
We got out unscathed this one.
Which I actually thought about that just before we started talking. I'm like, right, who's injured this week? And no one came to mind. I'm sure at some point it'll pop into my head in the middle of the show. But the good news seems to be more experienced players are coming back than are going out. So for the first time in probably 6 to 8 weeks, we're starting to look like we can field something like a full complement out there.
Yeah, well, actually, have you seen the team sheet? We're filming this on Tuesday night for our viewers. Have you seen the team sheet come out, Dubs? They're actually...
No, I've been busy all afternoon, mate, so I was looking forward to reading it through live with you.
It's going to be Pappenhausen's out this week. So apparently he's done his Achilles. The way, I think it was on the NRL website, said is Pappenhausen's being rested with an Achilles issue. So I'm hoping it's just he's got a tiny niggle and they just want to give him a week to get it 100% right. Yeah, when I saw that, I was very shocked because that really came out of left field. So Nico Hines has been given the starting fullback role, which has been interesting.
Big ask for him, but, you got to give him a chance.
Yeah, shall we? Well, maybe before we talk about the game coming up next week, do you want to have a quick look at the results from round 17 and have a quick look at the ladder?
Take us through how it's shaping up, because we're starting to get a pretty good picture now of what it'll look like.
All right. So, yeah, it's a good round 17. A lot of close games, a couple of upsets. So you had no upset there. The Panthers getting over the Broncos. You had the Knights beating the Sharks, which opened up the doors, which kind of opened up the doors for the Warriors, which we'll see the result later. They didn't win. I'm sure all our rugby league fanatical viewers know that. We obviously got over the Bunnies. The Bulldogs, it's another close loss.
They cannot take a trick.
Yeah, the Titans, they're doing all right. They're second half of the season, they're slowly improving, and with a few big names next year, they could challenge for the top 8. The
You
Titans.
never know. That's an epic game.
This was a great match, especially the last 10 minutes. I think the Tigers scored 3 tries in the last 10 minutes to win the game. Not sure if you heard this, but I can't remember who it was. Not Adam Reynolds, because he plays for the South, but Reynolds and another one of the Tigers players at halftime decided they weren't playing in the game, obviously. At halftime, they just decided to leave. They were cold and they didn't want to watch the second half, and they didn't want to watch their teammates. That is absolutely ludicrous. I hope
that is, you are paid God knows how much money. You're not playing, fine. How hard is it to sit in a football venue and watch a game? You absolute pair of tools.
And watch your teammates play. It sounds like there's a lot of disharmony going on at the Tigers at the moment.
What a joke. I don't know what, that's their business to deal with, but if I'm involved in that club, I'm wanting fines, internal fines, and I'm wanting something done about that. That's just basically a big middle finger to the rest of your teammates and say, hey, we're not on the side this week. I'm feeling a bit cold. I'm just leaving now. Imagine if you or I just decided, I don't really feel this today. I'm not essential for what's happening at the office right now. I'll just leave work.
Yeah, exactly. It's
not happening.
I hope the Tigers come down on them. But yeah, maybe they have already. I'm not too sure. All right, and then we had the Raiders and the Roosters. The Roosters grand final replay or rematch number 2. Roosters were too good in Canberra. And then we had, this was a good game to watch as well, the Warriors and Eels. The Eels just too good. It was a very close contest. The Warriors are exciting to watch. They scored some ripping, bloody exciting tries, but just not good enough.
They'll be a bit gutted, the Warriors, because that was their chance to really put pressure on the top 8, but they can still pinch something. You saw Cronulla had a stinker over the weekend, so the door is still slightly ajar. They need to get it done this weekend. Otherwise, if they don't, the top 8's decided.
Well, they're playing Cronulla this weekend too, so had they have won this week,
they'd have been playing to go equal on points.
Exactly right. And then we finished the round with a Golden Point thriller in Townsville. So the Cowboys got up. Again, that was a really good game.
2 dead rubber thrillers this weekend.
Yeah, and I saw when I was looking on 6:30, Cowboys Dragons. They're both out of it. And then I see the score with about 10 minutes ago. Oh, this is interesting. I might put it on. And and that was a great game. So here's the ladder. So Panthers have all but sort of secured the minor premiership.
They've got it now. They only need one win.
I don't know who they got. Well, they got Parramatta next week, so who knows?
You never know.
Battle for the top 4 was a big game. The Raiders, if they could have beaten the Roosters there, that would have, that was a really massive game for both clubs. Again, I think we'll go win the next 3. I can't see us really dropping any more points on the run home. As we've talked about, the 8, there's still a 4-point gap with only 3 games left. And if we look down at the bottom there, again, the Bulldogs, had they won, they would have jumped Brisbane. And anyway, so they've still got 3 more chances. So, yeah, and that's the ladder for this week. So, let's have a look. This is our game. We're playing the North Queensland Cowboys on Sunday. We're paying $1.10, very short odds there. Replay of the 2017 grand final that Dubs and I were both there. At 4:05 p.m. Sunday afternoon at the Sunshine Coast Stadium. So, the big news is Pappenhausen's out for us. Nico Hines slots in. Chris Lewis is also out, which I think is a bit unlucky. I thought he wasn't too bad in the last
week. Just a tad. I suppose it's, about picking the right players to fit the right roles, and maybe there just wasn't a role for him in this lineup, but it is a bit stiff. There's some massive ins, though, a couple of big names. One that I think we're surprised to see as quickly as he has, but it's fantastic news that Suliasi Vunivalu is back. I mean, he's been a noticeable absence. He's such a potent attacking force. He's somebody who makes wingers really, it's not paranoia, but he really puts pressure on defensive wingers, and he really gives us a fantastic option now with Josh Adokar on the other side. Both our attacking wings are really dangerous. Brenko Lee back in the centres. From this point on, I'd like to see that centre combination with Justin Olam. I think that with Marion Seve now out for the rest of the year, and Branko Lee's probably my preferred option at this stage. So apart from Nico Hines obviously making way for Pappenhausen, that back line is getting pretty close to what I'd like to see going into the finals. And good on Nico Hines. Let him have a run in that starting role in the number 1 jersey. And just seeing down to Munster and Hughes. The only switch I'd make there into finals is probably Hines for Pappenhausen.
Yeah, you're right. I think I agree with you. I mean, I'm interested to see where Latelli is. We obviously saw Sonny Bill Williams. The guy is just not fit, and Latelli's probably in a similar condition. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think unless there are injuries, both for confidence, for gelling, for fitness, I'd say Brinko Lee gets the nod, even though he's not necessarily the superior player technically. But right now, he's the better option, I would suggest. Unless there is another couple of injuries, I don't think we'll be parachuting anyone into that team unless they're match fit.
And I think having Sully back, obviously, it gives us a lot of that aerial threat. He's just fantastic in the air. And I think last week as well against Souths, all of our real attack did come down on that left-hand side on the Olam Adokar wing with Sully and Brenko now pairing up again. No disrespect to Lume. He was only playing his second game. We now have a bit more option in attack. So I think that's really positive too. So let's have a look. So that's our backs. Let's look at the forwards. So Nelson just slots in for Welsh. I mean, that's considering
and that's why we shouldn't be worried. Welshie I think is a better option for starting prop. Nelson I'd prefer to have at the back of the scrum. But I think right now Nelson just needs a run around somewhere in the forward pack. He's so bloody versatile. He can do anything. That pairing in the second row is back together for Lease and Kenny, which I think is a good sign. Tino at starting lock was a bit different last week, but I think you might as well give him the run now. I suspect when all is said and done, going into finals at the end of the day, to quote the great man, you'd probably, whether this is the best lineup or not isn't an argument I'll make, but my guess is he'll put Welchie in for Nelson and Dale Finucane in for Tino. Those two will be enforcers off the bench. That and Pappenhausen is probably your best starting lineup at the moment.
Yep. No, I think you're right. Tino made the NRL Team of the Week as well, playing at lock, so that was quite good.
And understated too, because he wasn't necessarily doing the big, devastating, high-impact moments that we love from Tino. It was actually, I think, a good all-round performance. Makes you more and more disappointed that we're losing him next season, but hopefully in the time we have left with him, we can see something pretty significant. He can be part of something pretty special.
Yep. If we look at the bench now, we got Jack, Schoenig, Vite, and Lume. Eisenhuth, Earl, Kamakamika. He's been named, which
good
is exciting.
See him back. That's in consideration.
Yeah, exactly. And Max King. So I don't think we'll see the starting lineup change, but I could see a bit of movement on our interchange, our reserves. So, but I think touch wood, barring any injuries or anything, that I think the starting 13's locked. One thing that was interesting, Jordan McLean's captaining them. So, former, obviously, Storm man, was he there in 2012?
He wasn't there in 2012, unless I'm mistaken, but 2017, and he was part of the 2016 grand final side as well. Lost him at the end of that, and he played in the grand final the following year. Disappointed not to have kept in a couple of former Storm players. Scott Drinkwater, of course, a very brief stint with the Melbourne Storm. But another player, not quite forgotten, but a very handy player back in that 2012 team, Justin O'Neill. And of course, not a Storm man, but quality. We know Valentine Holmes is a very capable player and somebody that we'll need to keep an eye on. I think the reality is that right now, they're a little down on confidence. They've had a team where a season where their team has kind of been knocked about a little bit. They're not in a good place mentally, and I think perhaps more importantly is that we've just got a bit more quality all around the park at the moment. But good on. I've got a lot of time for Jordan McLean as well. I liked him as a player with us. He's a big unit. I loved him when we had he and Nelson in the same side. Two of the biggest units we've had at the Melbourne Storm. So it'll be good to see them bumping up against each other, and hopefully Nelson wins that one on points.
And obviously, I haven't been following the Cowboys that closely, but I just realised there's no Taumalolo. So he's by far the best forward in the game. And so it will be tough for them. So how do you see this one finishing, Dubs?
I think we just have the depth of quality around the park, and no disrespect to the Cowboys, they've probably only got 3 or 4 players on that team sheet who can genuinely match it or shade their opponents in the Storm colours. So I would think with that kind of a back line operating again, we should be able to score fairly heavily. That said, I'm not going in with any hubris. I think this is the kind of game where if we can get a little bit of separation on them early, something we haven't done well, if we get that early momentum and get that separation from them, it could be a blowout. Otherwise, you just don't know what to expect from a team like the Cowboys. They've still got they'll still feel that they're a decent team. They've still got a couple of very decent players. So it depends how much they've got a sense of pride right now and how much they feel they've got to play for. My guess would be that with looking to 3 weeks away from the end of your season, you're probably finding it hard to get super motivated though. So I think this is a case where there's no one position. It's a case of all-round quality.
Yeah, I hope we get out to a big lead early, and then give some of those other players a bit more game time as well. I think that would be positive. And I want us to just really dominate the forwards from the start. I think that's where South Sydney were better than us in the first half last week. Their forwards just seemed just running with a bit more aggression.
They bullied us.
Yeah, so I just want us to put our stamp our authority early, and then from there, just cruise hopefully towards the end. But yeah, again, I can't see us losing. I just think we need to dominate from the word go, as I've already mentioned.
Bully early, bully them into submission a little bit, then open up the game for our backs to run amok.
Yeah. Now, Dubs, maybe just before we go into Pulse Pondering, so obviously Cam Smith, we haven't really talked about the whole Cam Smith situation. Just quickly, what's your take on the whole thing? Cam Smith, Harry Grant, Brandon Smith, retire, play on. What do you think?
I think it's my first instinct is that, and maybe it's because we're in Melbourne and we have the advantage down here that we don't get saturated with it. Certainly from our local journos, and our local journos tend to be a little bit more favourable towards the Storm because of their audience. I think there is a little bit of a beat up and far too much talked about. I know they want to know. Everybody wants to know if he's going to play on, who is going to be his replacement, what that means for Harry Grant and Brandon Smith. I think at this stage, I would honestly not be shocked if internally they have put a pin in those discussions, and certainly within the football department or within the match day football department until the end of the season. I don't think Cameron has to actually rush to make a decision right now if that's what there is pressure to do. That said, if he does decide to go, well, I'd be disappointed because I think he could do another season, and I think he'd still have value. If he decides to move on in the interest of the club because it secures a Brandon Smith or a Harry Grant, then that's okay. So I suppose when it comes down to it, it's going to sound a bit like I don't really care. I do, but I'm also not bothered at this stage. Maybe I think I've noticed less stress and anxiety among the Storm fans than I have about everybody bloody else in the league.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because he's our club legend, and we're sort of comfortable to say, no, he'll make his decision in time. But it seems to me that there's a lot more rage coming from people who aren't in the Melbourne Storm bubble.
Yeah, like Paul Kent, he's calling Cam Smith selfish. I'm like, what are you on about? Like, why are you so worked up about this?
It's not your problem, mate. Exactly. It's our problem. We'll deal with it. If we want to get angry at Cam Smith, which I don't, maybe some Storm fans do, that's fine. That's your business. I don't think he's doing any great damage to our brand. I mean, if we get to the end of the season and somehow Cam Smith's there, but we lose both Brandon Smith and Harry Grant, and the upshot is they said, well, we can't stay here because Cam Smith froze us out, then I'll say, okay, well, maybe I had something to worry about. I'm going to cross that bridge when I come to it. And there's also the culture of the club to consider. What if we went too hard the other way and Cam Smith got nudged and something went wrong the next year? Maybe we kept Brandon Smith or Harry Grant, but we started playing rubbish. The comments would all be, they killed the culture of that club by pushing one of the greatest players of all time out. So exactly. You can't win. If we're perceived to be pushing him to make a decision, we're bullying an absolute hero into doing what we want. So get over it, non-Melbourne Storm people. It's not your problem.
Yes, Smith should go out on his terms, and Bellamy's already said the club has a plan for if Smith plays on or if Smith retires. And I'm sure they've had those discussions with both Brandon Smith and Harry Grant. So I'm maybe it's blind faith, but I think the club and Bellamy and Smith have all sort of earned our trust, the fans' trust over the years. So I'm confident the right decision will be made in time. The one thing I just don't want to see is him in another club. I don't think I could stomach that.
No. It was hard enough with Cooper Cronk.
Yeah.
This is a whole level above that, even that.
Yeah, and he's wanted to be a one-club man. The one thing I'll remember about Cam Smith, I mean, he's still playing, but yes, he was a great player, but just the bloody loyalty he's shown to the place.
He's defined the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, so I think if he does, to go to another club, it's a very minor blemish for me. But I'm sure a lot of Storm fans would share that opinion. Now, I just want to share with you just quick. It was a post, I guess. There was this, I think it was a Facebook page called NRL Better Than Lego, if you want to check it out. And it was just comparing the Sonny Bill Williams and Cam Smith. So they were the two main stories. So it said, so the man on the right is talking about.
Is this a visual, by the way, or are you reading?
No. Sorry, I probably should have shown you the post, but there was a picture of Sonny Bill on the right, Cam Smith on the left. So it says the man on the right, Sonny Bill, is being lauded for his return to NRL after always chasing the biggest pay and turning his back on rugby league several times. While the man on the left is expected to retire or move on, and if he doesn't, apparently he's selfish. So talking about Cam Smith. You want to know who keeps killing league? Journalists and player managers. Two big stories right now is, should Smith retire and move on, and how good is the return of Sonny Bill? SBW. SBW was given a lifeline. He didn't breathe life into the game. The game brought life into him and launched his career. He's the selfish one, taking the spot of another player who's committed through COVID and trying to make his debut for a career. SBW is a pure athlete, yes, and we respect SBW, but all this hype, what a wank. SBW makes more money off his name and clever marketing. Smith has earned every accolade, even if you don't like him. If there's one player who should retire from the NRL, it is not the one on the left, Smith, and if someone should be lauded, it's not the one on the right, talking about Sonny Bill. So I think that was a really good thing that I read, and I thought, you're right. Like, why is this guy? Like, I'm sure Canterbury fans have a different opinion on Sonny Bill. I don't think they were really excited to see him back.
I think they loathed him, to be honest, and I don't blame him.
Oh, Gag, he left him halfway through the season. Like
he left him halfway through the season and shipped off to Code Hop and Country Hop simultaneously. He went to France to play rugby union. And in that time, I mean, I'm just doing the sums here. I think he's played for something like, he's had 11 different professional club stints across 2 different codes, twice code hopped back and forth. And that would be because he's even played in Canada. He's played Canada, France, New Zealand, Australia. So that's 4 different countries, 2 different codes, code hopped back and forth twice, walked out on a club mid-season, the club that helped make him, by the way. And now he's a bloody hero for returning. Jeez. I mean, he's an exceptional talent. He's also 35. And at the end of his run, this isn't like we're getting, this isn't like Andrew Johns, age 29 at the height of his powers when he was the best in the world or something. This is an exceptional player who is now coming back for what I can only assume is just another go at another professional sport. I think apart from the Bulldogs, he never played more than 50 games at any club he played for.
Yeah, that to me, he's very unfit, as we saw this weekend. 13 minutes and he was finished.
But if you were to show me his playing history and didn't tell me anything about the individual and I was looking at it blind, I'd say that's a mercenary.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a guy who goes wherever the money's good and doesn't stay for more than 3 or 4 seasons at a time.
Yeah, so he's a marketing machine. He knows how to, great athlete, don't get me wrong, but anyway.
Exceptional athlete. He's also, he's been known for his shoulder charges in both codes. I mentioned this to you earlier, but he, because for anyone who knows me, my family's from New Zealand, so, and they were rugby players, particularly my old man, played for Canterbury over there. It was quite fun a few years back when he broke an unfortunate record. He was the first All Blacks player to get a red card in 50 years. So 1967 to 2017, he got sent off for an incredibly reckless shoulder charge, just quietly. The kind of thing where you wonder if his brain was functioning. Could have killed his poor opponent. Anyway.
You're like, Chad Townsend. All right, Dubs, looking, don't want to take too much of our viewers' time. So let's move on to Polls Pondering. So this is part 2 of my Fallen Mediocres Club series. Now, I've got a lot to get through, so I'll try to sort of punch through it, but there we go, Dubs. Can you see that?
I see Western Reds. I see a huge red kangaroo. Great.
Yeah, the Western Reds. So we're looking at the Western/Perth Reds this week. So let me just get up my notes. So is the Western Reds still on the screen?
Western Reds. I see a big red kangaroo and a white jersey.
That's great. All right. So I've done a lot of research about this day. So rugby league first began being played in WA after World War II. So I won't go into the whole history of rugby league in WA, but basically WA is probably the 3rd biggest rugby league state. So it was only natural that when the league was expanding in the mid-90s, Perth was on the cards. Originally, they were called the Perth Pumas. There we go, the Perth Pumas. So that was the original concept, but then they changed it to the Western Reds. So yeah, conceived in 1992, first entered the 95 season, and it was in the background of the Super League war about expanding the game. Hang on, Dubs. Yeah, it's about expanding the game into all this new territory. First game was played in front of 25,000, and where they defeated St. George, which were a powerhouse back in the mid-90s, and on the 12th of March. They got 21,000 and ended up averaging 13,000 in their first season, which is pretty solid. It's more than the Storm did in our first season. We averaged 12.5, I think. Now, an interesting thing I found about their first game, a bit of a darker element of the Western Reds supporter base. I think they had a bit of a hooligan element happening. So this is a quote from this NRL article. The mascot for the barbecue chicken outlet, Red Rooster, was attacked by a gang of children after the Western Reds' first home game against St. George in Perth in 1995. The paddle pop lion came to his aid. So I thought that was an interesting little fact about their first game. And I just love how the paddle pop lions coming into bat. And they must have like a what do you call it? A bond that you got to help. You got to help each other.
It's a mascot bond. You see one of your commercial food outlet guys getting attacked, and you're like, I've got to get in there and help him. It's the code.
Yeah. Anyway, so 95 was a good year for them. They didn't make the finals. They finished 11th out of 20. They were only a win and points difference out of finals. However, they won 8 out of their 11 home games. So they played out at the Wacker, and they really made that a fortress for visiting clubs. However, after one season, just like the Crushers, they were struggling big time financially. So Rupert Murdoch got the Sunday Times. They basically became the major sponsor and were bailed out by Rupert Murdoch money. The big reason why they struggled financially was they had to actually pay for all their opposition to fly out and stay in Perth. So every week they were paying for a full rugby league club or team, a squad to fly to and from Perth from the East Coast. So that was just killing them financially. 96, they had a really pretty shocking start to 96, but they made a bit of a late charge. They only finished with 6 wins. They finished 16th out of 20. The average crowds dropped to about 8.5. 97, Super League, they finished 8th out of 10, had 7 wins. And again, about 8,500. So they were pretty mediocre after a somewhat promising first season. And when they were wound up at the end of the 97 season, they had $10 million in debt again, because a big contributing factor is they had to fly all those players across Australia. Now, the Western Reds story doesn't end there, Dubs. Well, let's have a quick see. There's Rodney Howe.
Good old Rodney Howe, absolute champ.
Now, actually, let me just finish up with the Western Reds story. So the Western Reds story doesn't end there. The club was actually resurrected in 2006 by the WARL and played in what was then called, I think it was the Ron Massey Cup or the Jim Beam Cup. It's basically the third tier. So you've obviously got the NRL, then you've got the NSW, RL, which is their top state league, and this is the league under that. They didn't have much success. The seniors withdrew in 2010. From 2010 to 2011, they played their under-18s team in the SG Ball, which is like the premier under-18s competition in New South Wales. And then, however, in 2012, they were either replaced / changed their name. I think it depends who you talk to. The whole time the WARL sort of running the show with this club, they changed to the West Coast Pirates, which is still around today, and they're playing in the SG Ball. And the interesting thing, in their first season, they were sponsored by Cash Converters, and currently these West Coast Pirates are still sponsored by Cash Converters. So whoever runs Cash Converters in WA is a massive rugby league fan. They plan to join the NRL. So the whole time they're trying to get some momentum, some capital together to join NRL. Now, the interesting one little quote of why they changed their names. This is a quote off Wikipedia. The West Coast Pirates were launched in 2012 after WARL research found that just over 50% of the marketplace associated the Western Reds name with failure. So that's why they changed their name.
It's a brutal summary.
Yeah, although they still use the same colours of red, black, yellow, and white. However, saying that, the Pirates have won the Wooden Spoon all but once in the last like 6-7 years. They've competed in that season in the SG Ball. Now, they say the Western Reds were basically, well, the Melbourne Storm was basically the Western Reds in disguise, somewhat. We did pick up a lot of their players in that first season. So the big two were Robbie Kearns and Rodney Howe, but we also picked up the likes of Wayne Evans, a young Matt Geyer, who's playing in like their reserve grade juniors, John Wilshere, Tristan Brady-Smith, Paul Bell, and Semi Tajulala all were with the Western Reds before joining us. And they also had a 25-year reunion. So that's the Western Reds. Here's Rodney Howe. That was the Perth Pumas. That's not a good photo. That's the 95 team. I found this on Instagram. Someone's got this Western Red shrine in their house. It's fantastic. Look at it.
Interesting.
They've got like the whole Super League. That was their Super League jersey there. Yeah. So they've still got their fans. Yeah, see, sponsored by Cash Converters. They even had their own number plates, the Western Reds, back in the day. That's Mark Geyer. He was obviously their big marquee signing back in '95. Now, this is an interesting photo. This is the 2019 West Coast Pirates jerseys, which is obviously a tribute to the '95 Western Reds jerseys back then. So they're obviously, continuing on the tradition. And there we go. The fans bring back the Reds. So they want a club, Dubs. This was their 25-year reunion right here. And this is when they played in England, in '97, when the World Club Challenge was like every team competed. It wasn't just the two winners playing off. There's Mark Geyer again. There's Rodney Howe and Robbie Kearns in the '97 season.
We got our front row for the '99 premiership out of these guys.
Yeah, so that's the Western Reds. What was I going to say? Dubs, do you think Perth deserve a team in NRL?
Deserve, yes. It probably won't happen in the foreseeable future. And part of the problem is, and let's be fair to them, I'd find it hard to make a model financially sustainable if I had to fly my teams as well. So I think there has to be some blame put back on the league and the administration for allowing that to happen and actually assuming or thinking that there'd be other ways to underwrite that cost. It's an enormous cost. Unfortunately, I just can't see the NRL deciding it's a worthwhile financial investment, even though it's probably a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, I mean,
so deserve probably. They deserve to Perth. You're not going to get. Sorry.
Like Auckland to Perth's a bloody long way.
That's a huge way. You're crossing multiple time zones. And look, you only need to look in other codes in rugby union. The Western Force decided to let the Western Force go, even though probably on paper the Melbourne Rebels, even though it benefited Melburnians, the Melbourne Rebels were probably the right option to be cut. But I just don't think sports administrators here in Australia really love the fact that Perth is so far away. Very harsh on them, and probably the only sport they can consistently get a really decent market share is footy, and that's because it was, along with after Victoria, South Australia and West Australia, huge Aussie rules footy states. So that's the only sports where they seem to be able to remain financially viable. Yeah. They've always had a football, that soccer team over there. And they've had a basketball team over there, but rugby league, they just couldn't get enough. They couldn't generate quite enough to remain. So the harsh reality is you're probably just not going to get a rugby league team in Perth anytime soon, whether they deserve it or not. But enough about Perth. We are, of course, talking about the Melbourne Storm, and the way we love to finish this graveyard shift is with your look at memes this week. So meme away, my friend.
Yep, that's right. Just quickly, I would love to see a Perth team, and the more the merrier. All right, let's. Again, why is it always the memes that are hard to get up? All right, here we go.
I'm sure there's a meme in that somewhere.
Yeah, me. All right, here we go. First one. Poor Josh Morris plays 300th game this week. All focus on SBW. So that was really the story that didn't make it. Great servant of the game. He's still bloody good at his age. So there we go. Next one. There's a few out. I was hoping there'd be better ones, but this is probably the funniest one. It was at this moment Chad knew he fucked up. He put a video out there on his YouTube account, like saying, "Oh, just didn't know what I was doing," and he didn't even apologize to Ponga. Anyway,
I think the first thing you would do is probably apologize.
Yeah, this was Saturday night's game. The Tigers ninth place. Oh no, you don't. That ninth place is mine, and I think that's a trampoline one where
Trampoline.
yeah. So well done, West. You're still fighting for ninth. So and you've got ninth at the moment. The Warriors lost. This is me every week. Dear sweet baby Jeebus, please help the helpless dogs beat the hapless Titans so the pathetic Broncos from Brisbane are coming last. So every week I'm praying that the dogs can finally get up and get a win. Alas, they come close, but they keep losing. Look, everyone, SBW is back. See, no one cares. That's Jurassic Park, isn't it?
Dodson meme. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Telling it.
Exactly. From like a actual perspective, he didn't do much, and he's probably not going to be. He's going to be an impact bench player at best come finals. Here's Jai Arrow again. His mullet. He's featured already once in our memes, but here it is again. One mustn't just have a mullet. One must be the mullet. It's the mullet of the season. Schoening's is pretty good, but I think this one takes the cake. It's really short at the front.
This is just a different level.
Yeah. And last one, I don't know if this book's for real, but I thought this was pretty funny. Happy Father's Day. The night Dad went to jail. To all the Souths fans out there missing their dads. This one's pretty harsh. But it works.
That's just vicious, but it's very funny.
But it's a rabbit. That's what makes it so funny. I don't know why I found this one so funny. I'm just a meme.
Oh, we should send that to our friend Nick.
Yeah, we should send it to Nick. All right. Yeah, and they're the memes of the week, Dubs, and that, I guess, wraps up another show.
Done, Pole Man.
Yep.
But for all the viewers at home, I just want to say thank you for joining us once again. Get behind the Melbourne Storm this weekend. A couple more wins and we will be guaranteeing a top 4 finish and a real charge towards another premiership, our 6th premiership.
That's right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Go Storm, and we'll see you next week.